and the people who love them.
Hello, this is The Thing About Cars, doing episode 2 of our insurance series, sitting at the table with
Beka
and
Becky.
And we left off with our agenda of insurance topics. From where do we start with the list that remains? Beka, I want to make sure we cover all this in this episode.
Yeah, I think we were trying to get mostly the basic points in. Just Joe Blow insurance policy holder.
The last time, I think, we started to talk about the basics, and we kept getting bogged down with all the exclusions and all the external, the extraneous caveats that have to go in with whatever agreements that the insured party has to abide by within their own policy. But this time I want to talk about these things. So,
well, and Becky pointed out there was something else she wanted to continue with that we had touched on with the emails, the getting things in writing.
Yes, the implied authority. So again, just for those of you who might just be coming into this, if there has been a collision or something comprehensive like a tree falling on your car, make sure that you speak with your agent, and if there's something you don't understand, you ask them about it. Always follow up with an email. What they say in our office is that if it's not in writing, it didn't happen.
Sure.
But if you get it in email, then at least you have a record of speaking to your agent and either their response giving clarification or their non-response, which is still fine because you have a record of asking.
You need the paper trail.
Yes, you do. But implied authority is that if I say, additional insured is pretty common and I think you have it, so we're going to go ahead and write up this policy. I think you have it is not a definite yes, but it implies that it's on your policy.
Mm-hmm.
If something happens,
yes,
that implied authority, I have to provide it.
Mm-hmm.
So just make sure that you follow up so there's no problems.
So, Beka, standard versus non-standard markets. Let's talk about that first.
Well, we had kind of talked about that previously. Now, hold on. I want to go back on a
We always
point,
go back, and we're going to do a third episode.
Excuse me? One thing that she kind of touched on that drives me nuts, and actually I had an incident with my own agent, and it blew my mind because he knew who I worked for. And I'm not going to drop names. I worked for the largest insurance brokerage in the world. So generally mention of their name, that's how I got a lot of money in my not at fault accident. You accidentally pull a business card out and suddenly people are talking to you. But your agent is there to counsel you, to explain to you whatever you need on an insurance level regarding the property that they service. So if it's your auto insurance agent and you are in a collision that is not your fault and you need help, he or she needs to talk to you. And it can be the agent, it can be the customer service rep, it can be whoever is on the team if they can answer your questions. But for example, everybody who listens to the shows know what kind of cars I typically drive. So if it's a Ford, I know who I can go to. I know where parts can go. I know all the different things and don't need a lot of guidance. I had that Pontiac for 120 days when Buckhead Barbie hit me. I had never owned a GM. And I'm asking them, I tried calling them for their list of who's your approved places. They would not. They were actually getting upset with me. Why are you
That's her company or your company?
This was my company. Now, I was not at fault.
Yeah.
But this is same day of the accident. Okay, and my head is already going. The car had to be towed because my insurance company wouldn't call me back. I had to use the county impound service, basically, the police department record to clear it off scene because even though I had tow coverage, my insurance company wouldn't call me back. All these problems. So the first thing anybody should know, whether it's you're at fault, you're not at fault, there's no collision, you just have a question. They need to talk to you. If they don't talk to you, you either need to find a new agent or you can even go as far as to file a complaint with the insurance commissioner's office.
Yes. I have actually done that. Just to let everybody know, I had a definitely not at fault accident in November of 14, just actually a couple weeks after I got married. And they totaled my just paid off 2007 stick shift Civic. There we go.
Manual.
Yes. And I love that car to death. But she was high. She left the scene of the accident, came back with her boyfriend. The cops were like, I didn't see it happen, so I can't make judgments. It's all sorts of crazy.
That's
and
wrong.
then
That is very wrong.
my agent wanted to go ahead and charge me the deductible. Their agent would not get me medical coverage. He said they were not required to do so because I was not physically injured in the accident. Now, most of the policies that I have read, granted, it's commercial lines, but you need to read your own policy. It will cover mental health as well. And when you're waking up 4 or 5 times a night and going to the window to make sure that, you know, the new car is okay, you kind of need something for that.
There's a term for that. I'm sorry. Which one?
Any of them.
Any of them.
I've tried 3 times now to introduce
list.
standard versus non-standard market, and we keep going
Okay,
down
but
that road.
we did talk about that. Your standard lines are going to be the ones with the filed rates that have to follow the guidelines. They're in the box. They can't charge you willy-nilly. Your non-standard. This is just kind of a recap that I'm deliberately doing quickly.
Sure.
The non-standard are people that they can change rates. They don't necessarily have to go by filed rates. They can tack on fees. They're not following the book.
So how do I know what's standard and what's non-standard?
You can actually, the best way to know is look them up.
So there's a list of standard versus non-standard
AM
companies.
Best. Do you know of anybody better than AM Best?
I really don't.
I think that's pretty much the insurance standard to look up, not only their filing status, so if they're standard or a non-standard market, it'll also give you the rating of the company. Anything in an A obviously is the best. There's A++, which just means that they are financially stable. Once you get into B's, and I'm trying not to use the technical term.
See, now I think we've just lost a listener because it's like we were talking about. I mean, what do these ratings have to do with me being involved as just a general everyday driver?
Well, you were asking how to know if they're standard or non-standard.
So if I go to AM Best and look something up,
it'll tell you.
it'll say standard versus non-standard.
Yes.
Why would I care what rating they have?
As far as your rates and fees. I mean, primarily, but financial backing is very important. You don't want your insurance company to suddenly dissolve, or there could be buyouts. A lot of people did that Esurance, and then suddenly they were bought out.
Don't they still exist?
I haven't seen them in a long time, but
Me neither.
I don't remember who their original backer was, but then all of a sudden the commercial switched to Allstate.
Well, they were acquired by Allstate,
Yes.
so I don't know if it simply became Allstate, and Allstate now has an online portal for insurance, or what.
But so many people do.
Yeah.
So they were back in the beginning of online. So I have a feeling that Esurance probably isn't. I'm not sure. They're not a company that I would
We need to look
personally
that
seek
up,
out.
'cause I think they simply got acquired by Allstate and are now the online wing of Allstate.
Probably.
But if you do have questions, you do need to go to that AM Best and you do need to look it up.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And they of course will have a guide there telling you
Sure.
exactly what everything means.
Why would I avoid? Why do people choose to do business with non-standard
And
companies?
that's where I was going to go. If you were somebody, we'll stick to auto.
Okay.
If you are somebody who has had a number of at-fault accidents, a large amount of tickets, you're barely skirting by, but you still have a driver's license somehow, the standard markets who operate by the book, in the box, they don't want you.
Sure.
They're going to decline you.
You're a huge risk. Why would they? Yeah.
Exactly. And something we'd kind of skirted a little bit before, insurance companies are a business. They are there to mitigate their loss or to reduce paying out. They want to bring in more than they're giving out. If you are a high hazard, if you are a known risk, the standard markets are not going to want you.
Right.
They're going to say not, and you're going to have to turn to non-standard. You're going to be pretty much forced in that direction. And there's a lot of companies, when you go by the used car lots and it says no credit decline, think of them like the non-standard insurance.
Sure.
No person declined, but we will fee and
Well, I
rate
mean,
you to death.
That's the other side of my question, which is, okay, if I'm a reputable standard insurer and I see a driver out there who's just a high risk driver, I don't want to insure them. Why does then any company put themselves in a position to service that person? Because if that person, let's pretend it's me now, let's pretend I'm the guy who's the high risk driver. Mm-hmm. I can either beg and plead with my standard insurance company to keep me insured, and they can charge me money for it.
They're filed rates.
Or I can go to a non-standard company who's still going to charge me more money for it with all the other fees and stuff that they impose, right?
But see, the standard market can't change their rates, and they can't fee you to death. They've got a scale of their risks, but they can only go so far. Okay. If you are that bad of a driver with that bad of a record, you have to go non-standard where they can charge you whatever they feel like charging you. The problem is they can't take away your driver's license. You have to have insurance to be legal. So somebody non-standard will take you.
You're saying they're not bound by the same laws and regulations as standard companies?
Basically.
Okay. Yeah. That's why there's standard versus non-standard.
So that's where the actual definition split occurs.
Until the state takes away your driver's license, they're the only ones that can actually do that. So if you have one, even if you have 13 out of 15 points on your driver's license, you still have one. They haven't taken it away. You'll find insurance, but you're going to be forced into non-standard. Or else, in the state of Georgia, if you allow your auto insurance to lapse or to drop and you have no coverage, they will notify the DMV, DDS, Department of Driver Services, and they will suspend your license for not owning insurance. I've seen that happen.
Does that happen in Alabama, Becky?
I think so. I do know that we've had lapses where it's been a couple of weeks, and we can go back and we can... Now, this is only in commercial lines. This is not in personal lines. Mm-hmm. They can go back and they can say, well, we need to reinstate our insurance. So like, okay, well, you need to pay this bill and this fee, and there you go.
But is that on the property, the real property, or is that on an auto, commercial auto?
This is on commercial autos. Mm-hmm. This is on commercial autos. They just want their insurance reinstated. Mm-hmm. I'm going to assume that it is for not only the property, but is also for the collision. Because this is commercial lines, but then again, you are always going to have to read your policy. Not every policy
We'll have to look that up later on.
Yes.
Okay, so now let's talk about...
let's go to ACV versus RC.
Okay.
And actually, I think I came across that more on building and contents than truly on auto.
ACV means?
Actual cash value.
It does not mean apple cider vinegar. But it does mean actual cash value.
Actual cash value.
RC is not the
replacement cost. Right. Replacement cost. Where these come in, all my best examples are with buildings.
Okay.
Well, I've got a few with cars.
So are we talking about something like with a modified car that has an actual cash value that's higher than the stated stock value for the car?
No, you're into Blue Book versus fair market.
Okay.
Right.
Okay,
so
you've got a different... So actual cash value. So let's say... Well, what's one of your examples? I mean, obviously the value of a car, but we don't want to go to fair market. We want to go... It's probably going to be more with a part. Okay. Well, tires. I'm not that you see tires insured a lot, but I mean, if you're in an accident and they're damaged, that might work. The actual cash value of your tire, I don't know if it's the best one, but it's got half of its tread life and it's been damaged. The actual cash value would be 50%
of the replacement cost
of what you paid for it, and then you've got replacement cost. We'll assume there aren't any used car or used tire shops out there. The only way to replace it is to buy one with the full tread life. And let's say to buy a brand new one is $200, but you've got $100 worth of value on it because you've worn it halfway through. Your actual cash value is the state that it's in right before it was damaged in the incident. Mm-hmm. So $100, and then to replace it, to buy a new one, would be that $200 new tire.
Now this can go both ways. Replacement cost is to replace the part in kind and quality, whereas actual cash value is how much is it worth on the book. For the whole car, you're probably going to get actual cash value because all they do is decrease in value. If you want replacement cost on the car, it's not going to be on your standard insurance policy. Replacement cost is going to be, just like what Becca said, more on the parts.
Right. Now, if we get into the blue book, there's a lot of blurry lines with how we're saying it. Because then when you get into fair market value versus blue book, your standard insurance policy on your car is blue book. That tends to play out with what people refer to as being totaled out. There are calculations on how much they'll pay for damages to your vehicle before they'll just write you a check and try to take your car away, basically. And it's based on this value, and it's blue book. Mm-hmm. And all that means is, everybody probably knows at this point Kelly Blue Book.
Sure.
And all it's really taking into account is what the vehicle is, how old it is, how many miles are on it. And it's a very straight to the point. The fair market is actually, if you were to take this car undamaged out to the market and sell it, what are people willing to pay for it? And that's where the giant differences come in. And when we were recording yesterday, it came up when we were talking to Beka, and I had made the example of my Mustang that I love dearly, and I'm going to say this for the second time, and it actually pains me to talk about this. If you were to look up the Blue Book value, simply because my Mustang is a almost 22-year-old Mustang with nearly 200,000 miles, Blue Book, if I get a door ding, they're going to try to total me out, because Blue Book is about $250. However, even if she were bone stock, fair market, because of how long it's been since those cars have been for sale, how scarce they're becoming out there, what people are willing to pay to get one is increasing. And a lot of people saw that with the Fox chassis at, I think it was Barrett. They were choking over what somebody paid on a Fox chassis just because of that. So that's when you start looking at the fair market value policies, because even stock, I could probably get between 8 and 10 possibly. Some of that might be because of the modifications. But it gets a little bit blurry with the ACV and the RC when we start speaking in certain ways with the fair market and the...
So let's jump ahead, because we are running out of time again. I want to just touch on two things. I definitely want to cover don't call it an accident, but before we get there, what do I do then? And let's say I'm driving a highly modified Honda Accord. How do I make sure that I'm properly covered for all the modifications I've made to my car?
You let them know about it. You call your agent. You say, look, these modifications have been made. I want to be insured for this.
Okay.
And you make sure that you are, that it's not actual cash value. Try and get replacement cost on the parts. Try and make sure that the parts are new. Sometimes they'll replace them with used parts. Now, this is a very big generalization, but I've learned this.
It depends on the part. But
yes.
Don't forget, you want a rider on that too. And some people will call it an article floater, where you're listing the parts separately. So if you have I've seen superchargers upwards 10,000, depending on, you want to make sure that's on a separate floater. So it's like having a, not really separate policy, but you know what I mean. It's you're making sure you're getting the amount for that, and it still diminishes like a vehicle, but then you get into stated and agreed, and
yes.
So continue. Sorry.
But just make sure that you can insure it for as much as you can. It is going to cost you, but it's a lot better than if something happens to your car and they don't take it into consideration.
So I basically have to provide my insurance people with a list of what I've done.
Yes.
And get them to agree to give me replacement costs on those things if an incident occurs.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Because I've heard that only like 1 or 2 companies will even agree to do that. That if you say you have a Honda, then what they're going to pay you for is a Honda.
It's okay. My advice also, go through a brokerage. They have access to more policies than just say your State Farm agent, because he's only gonna sell you a State Farm policy. But a brokerage,
a marketplace, basically. Yeah.
Right. Brokerage can go through and say, okay, well, this isn't going to work for this. This isn't going to work for this. We can do your auto through here, and then we can get you the extra insurance you need.
So now that we're actually officially out of time, let's talk about what to do if an incident. I'm calling it an incident because you said don't call it an accident.
It's a collision, just in legal term. If you're having a casual conversation, it's okay. But the word accident itself implies no fault.
Okay.
So if you are having a legal conversation, say like you wanted to send a letter to that other company, if you refer to it as an accident, oh, that happened by accident, it's strange. I know, it's a word we've started using that technically implies no fault. But I think that's a very important thing we probably should have touched on day one, what to do in the event of a accident, collision, wreck, whatever you want to call it. We're not even using legal words at this point. You've stepped out, you've looked at your car, you're dismayed. What do you need to do? And often that's a big problem because you don't realize how shaken up you are half the time.
Mm-hmm.
So the incorrect list of things to do would not be to pee my pants, rip out the rest of my hair, and run wailing wildly into the distance as the sun sets.
You can do the first two if you want, and you can probably get compensated for it if you know what to do.
Okay.
But don't run away.
Okay.
Never run away. First thing that you need to do, let's say you're not at fault. And the reason why I'm saying that, I'll get into that. First thing you need to do, take pictures. Because in Georgia we have the if you can steer it, clear it law. Most people don't do it, but some people might do it to try to skew the scene. Get out, take pictures, then move your car.
If you can get out. If you're injured, stay put.
So the first priority is, of course, safety.
Yes.
And the second, if you can get out and take quick pictures, take them.
So safety, then well-being, we'll put that in there. So
Sure.
definitely, yes. But I was making the assumption that everybody is okay.
Sure.
If you're injured, it skews things a bit. But yeah, start taking as many. You'll think it's silly. It doesn't matter. Something. If we weren't out of time, I have some great examples.
Mm-hmm.
As many as you can. Yours, theirs, inside, outside, whatever you can do. Get their information. Obviously, I know it's hounded into people, but again, sometimes in those moments after an accident, you're not thinking as clearly as you think you are.
I'm going to interrupt. So in Georgia, we have this law on the interstates that says if your car is movable, get it out of traffic lanes.
If you can steer it, clear it.
So clear it first and then take pictures?
I would say take
do it
pictures
before.
first.
Okay.
I mean, quickly, safely, especially when we're talking about the interstate. We'll just keep piling on cars if you let us.
Yeah.
But no, take it as is, as many as you can, even if you're just sticking your hand out the window and snapping just to get an idea, because that initial angling can also tell them who's at fault.
Another thing, if you are in a position where you are in the driver's seat but you cannot get out, because I had this happen to me. Someone slammed into my driver's side door and I couldn't open it. I was fine, thank goodness, but I couldn't open it. Yeah, get it out the windshield. I was able to get their tag. I was able to get what kind of car it was, everything. And that helped me out a lot. Mm-hmm. Then afterwards, after you take the pictures, call the cops. If you can move it, of course, move it.
Yes.
But do that first if you're here in Georgia. In Alabama, that's different. Just follow the local laws and do your best. But
So call the cops before I talk to the other guy.
yeah, call your cops. Then you call your insurance agency.
Even at that moment?
Well,
first
I would say talk to the other driver first, then talk to your agent. And that's why I was going to use the example that you're not at fault. A lot of people don't realize, call your own agent.
Mm-hmm.
Not only are you notifying them that property that they insure has been damaged in some way, shape, or form, but again, that agent, even when you're not at fault, needs to counsel you in whatever way. If you have towing coverage, at the moments or even the days after an accident, things aren't kicking in yet. You need to tow that car.
I think I know maybe only 2 people in my entire life who have their agent's phone number stored in their phone.
I used to have it memorized.
It's on the back of your insurance card.
3. I mean, I know 3.
No, keep it in your contacts list. You never know.
The 1-800 number for your agency, or at least the number of your direct agent, should be on the back of your insurance card. And you have to have that card in your vehicle. So remember that.
Right.
And make sure you call them. Even if it's not going to kick in immediately, you are getting the ball rolling.
Okay.
Yes, and they need to know. But and I can also bring up auto assist again. I won't, but there's an area in that app. So I'm assuming you have your information in your phone. There are apps, even if it's a photo album, you can still have a picture of it. It's not legal until you have the physical card, but it gives you the information you need.
So let me recap and bring us up to where we are, and then let's figure out what happens next. The incident occurs. I take pictures of it right away. I clear it if I have to. I call the cops. I might call the insurance guy, and I need to talk to the other driver to get their information.
We'll definitely call your agent.
Yeah.
Even if it's later, I would say
So go
later,
ahead and
because
call
the
the
scene
agent.
is the most important. So you need to make sure the police are responding,
Yeah.
and you need to get that other driver's information if you can. Again, if you're injured, a
Right.
lot of this doesn't take place.
So
Just and one more thing. if you definitely need to make sure that if there are any witnesses, you get them to hang around and give a statement to the police, because they can, and I've had this happen, walk away and get somebody else to take the blame.
What happens if the other driver says, "Oh, we don't need to call the police. Let me just give you a copy of the driver's license"?
No, you call the cops anyway.
No.
You call them.
I've had people do that, and then you know what? All you have to do tomorrow, you've both left the scene. If one person leaves the scene, it's a hit and run, or leaving the scene of the accident. You both leave, nothing happened.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And then it doesn't matter what you have. It's become a battle of your word versus theirs. So always have the police arrive. And even if the other person takes off, never leave the scene.
Okay, so we've done all these things. Let's pretend this has all happened. I've had the accident. I've taken pictures. I've pulled over. I've called the cops. I've called my insurance guy. I'm talking to the other driver. We're exchanging information anyway. What happens next?
Well, as soon as you get the number for that police report, you make sure that your agent has a copy of that.
Okay.
And you get it day one, too.
Yeah.
When you're not at fault, not just at fault, not at fault, you get a copy of that right away, because there could be inaccuracies. There could be just, flat out wrong. You need to make sure you have that as quickly as possible. And then, like she just said, make sure your agent has a copy.
And different states have different means of actually generating this report.
Yes.
The incident that happened with me in South Carolina, it took them like 2 weeks to even generate the form that I needed, and another 2 weeks to actually request it. So,
But there could be a law in that state. If you're in a state that you're not familiar with, you can go to that insurance commissioner's website and probably get that information. How long are they required, or what is their time frame? How quickly are they required to get this to me? Okay. Because it could be, especially with the things you dealt with, not a legal issue or a law. It's that particular agency was deliberately wasting your time.
Oh, and if that happens, just to let everybody know, everybody has a national producer number, and I'm going to assume that everyone has a state producer number, because in order to do anything in insurance, you have to have a producer's license. Yes. So get one or both of those numbers if you can. You're going to need that to file with the state. And then it
also known as an agent.
So you're talking about...
I'm doing a side comment. Everybody listening, a producer is also known as an agent.
Sorry.
I think you're using the word producer, whereas other people might simply want to use the word licensed provider of some sort.
Yes, but bad habit on my part.
Yeah, no.
Different.
I get it. I just want to make sure the listener knows that we're not talking about something else.
Well, a producer's license is what it's called in Alabama.
Okay.
So if you're in Alabama, producer's license. If you're somewhere else, just get the numbers.
Yeah.
Just get the numbers.
Get their license number.
I don't even have my license on me, I don't think.
Oh, I have a picture somewhere, because when I go to all this testing and stuff, I have to have it.
Becca's driving without a license.
No, my agent's license. My producer's
I get
license.
it. I'm just being intentionally obtuse here.
I'm opening my purse. That's what this strange zipper noise is here.
So then after that, after I get my police report in, and the insurance company then simply makes a decision what they're going to pay for and what they're not going to pay for, what happens next?
If we're that far along, then you begin the negotiations.
Okay.
Which are so much fun.
Which people don't realize. The number that you're given, whether it's your agent or another person's agent, you don't have to accept that number.
No.
You don't have to take that as the only offering. One thing that you came across, if they are sending out an adjuster to your vehicle, you need to be notified. You have every right to be present anytime anybody is inspecting your vehicle, regardless of the location that it's at. But also, you don't have to accept their word for it. You can get a second opinion, a third opinion. You can do whatever you want. And then there's also services that I would normally put further along, but I know we've been talking for a while. There's also third-party appraisers that I highly recommend. Super important service.
Make sure you read your policy on that, because there are generally rules about if their adjuster and your adjuster don't agree, the rules about how a third-party adjuster works.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also this thing called subrogation. If you just have a liability policy, you don't have any right to subrogation whatsoever. I'm sorry, Mickey, you found this out.
I found that out the hard way.
Yeah.
So what is subrogation?
Subrogation is when your company goes ahead and pays you for everything so you can get your financials taken care of. At least this is just in the auto thing. Mm-hmm. And then they go after the other company to get their costs back.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like one insurance company is suing another.
Right.
And to me, that's like the more down-to-earth practical reason why I would want something other than just a liability policy. Because it makes my company work for me if something happens.
Right, and that's what it is. It should work for you.
And in my case, it's like, okay, I can't remember exactly what the price breaks were, but it was significantly more expensive to buy a comprehensive policy than it was to buy just a liability policy. So, and I like keeping my money in my pocket.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, me too, but just with my experiences, I'm always going to have full coverage on that thing.
Well, wait a minute. On a point you just made, if you were to lose your Mazda today, how much would it cost you to go out and buy a new Mazda?
I mean, that's the other point,
okay, so
right?
yes, it when you're looking at that number, yeah, it can hurt. But if you think of the flip side, what it will help you with in the event that something happens.
I mean, that's the thing. If I drove like a super expensive car that I couldn't afford to replace on my own, then yes, I'm buying a comprehensive policy.
Well, let me ask you this: how many cars are super expensive? And if something happened today, would you be able to go out and have a new one by this afternoon?
Well, that's what I mean. But that's subjective, right?
Yeah.
Because I can't go out. I can go out and replace this Mazda tonight if I needed to. But if I drove Ben's Mazda, right? It's a much newer, nicer Mazda 3 than my old ancient Mazda 6. I don't know that I could go out and buy another Mazda 3 right off the lot.
Right.
But one thing along these lines, that the way we're talking about, if you have a car that was super expensive that you purchased at one point and you have it insured, it's totaled out. There's no guarantee you're going to get enough money out of that policy. The majority of policies is not going to give you enough money to go out and buy another new super expensive car. Majority of the time, you're not going to get enough back. You're not going to be able to get that car again. Then you've got the issue of if you're still paying money on the first one, then there's a whole issue. But then there's the coverages we've already talked about, but there's also stop loss, sometimes called stop gap. That's a big deal when you have payments still. You want to make sure at least that loan is paid off.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than trying to pay money on a car that's not even on your driveway, anymore.
Right, it's gone, and the payout didn't even pay off the loan, let alone get you a new car.
Right.
That's when stop loss or stop gap comes in, and it at least fills the gap there. It doesn't give you a down payment, but...
Yeah. Okay. Last thing, and then we're going to wrap this up.
Last thing. We are not just selling insurance for what if. We are selling insurance because it's gonna happen. It was literally not even a week after I had bought my new Mini, after the tree destroyed both of our cars and totaled my beloved 99 Camry stick shift. I was at work. Keep in mind, I work for an insurance brokerage. Some girl comes in, she's ugly crying, "I hit your car!" So it's not, oh, it might happen. It will happen. So make sure that you're protected and you're covered. Yes, it's a pain to deal with. Yes, it's a lot to read. Yes, you're paying money out of your pocket. But something's going to happen, and you're going to want to be covered as much as possible. And always make sure that if you don't understand it, go talk to somebody. Talk to your agent.
If your rates are high and you're paying a lot of money, it's based on probability. All insurance is based on probability. So if you're paying a lot of money, it's probably because the likelihood of it happening is pretty high. Yeah. So you're paying a lot of money, but it's going to happen.
It's clear that we could talk about this a whole lot more and a whole lot more different ways. We may have to revisit this at a future date. For now, to the listener, if you have questions or comments on any of these things, please find us. Our website is thethingaboutcars.com. We also have a Facebook page. We can get messages from you guys either way. We are not offering legal advice. Let me put that caveat out there right away. And we're not even offering professional insurance advice. We're just going to tell you about things we know and suggest things that you might do.
And we're basing it on the states we live in. It varies by state
Your
by state.
Mileage may vary.
Do your research.
Your mileage may vary. So, but we love hearing from you guys. And please write us letters. Let us know what you think. If you have an interesting story to tell about something that happened to you in an accident.
Collision.
Yes. Again, find us online, and we will look forward to joining you with more Thing About Cars content soon. Have a great evening.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. This has been The Thing About Cars. We'll see you on the road.